There is a version of London that the tourist boards photograph: the red buses, the Georgian terraces, the market stalls, the river at golden hour. That version of London is real. It exists, but it shares a city with a version that nobody photographs: the shuttered high streets, the council chambers issuing Section 114 notices, the communities that have been told for 30 years that regeneration is coming and have watched the cranes arrive for someone else. In 2026, something is measurably wrong in parts of this city. Not in the dramatic, visible way that makes headlines, but in the slow, grinding, statistical way that only becomes undeniable when the numbers accumulate. Population projections falling, high street vacancy rates climbing, house prices moving in the wrong direction while adjacent boroughs rise, economic inactivity concentrating, the infrastructure aging without replacement. This is not a political argument. It is a data argument. And the data, drawn from the Office for National Statistics, the Greater London Authority, and the UK House Price Index published by the government, says that 10 London boroughs are under pressures in 2026 that the surface level story of the city does not acknowledge. This is what that looks like borough by borough. Havering sits at the northeastern edge of Greater London, bordering Essex, containing Romford, Hornchurch, and Upminster. On the surface, it is suburban, functional, and unremarkable in the way that outer London boroughs often are. Below the surface, the trajectory data makes for uncomfortable reading. The Greater London Authority's population projections show Havering losing population over the next decade, one of only 2 London boroughs projected to shrink, alongside Barking and Dagenham. That projection is not a distant forecast. The demographic pressures driving it are already visible in the age structure of the borough. Havering has the highest proportion of residents over 65 of any London borough. The working age population is leaving. The older population is not being replaced at the same rate by younger arrivals. The borough is aging faster than London, and faster than the infrastructure built to serve it can adapt. Romford's High Street tells part of the story. Retail vacancy rates have climbed as major anchor tenants have exited. The covered market, once a genuine civic institution, has contracted. The hospitality and retail businesses that form the commercial backbone of any town center have been under sustained pressure from a combination of reduced footfall, rising business rates, and a consumer base whose spending power has been eroded by a decade of wage stagnation in the sectors that define Havering's employment base. The Elizabeth line arrived at Romford and the surrounding areas with genuine fanfare. Journey times to central London shrank. House prices in the immediate station catchment lifted. But an Elizabeth line station does not address a borough where the population is structurally aging, where economic inactivity among the working age population sits above the London average, and where the council's financial position leaves limited room for the kind of investment that turns a trajectory around. Havering is not collapsing. It is receding, slowly, measurably, and without the dramatic moment that would make it easier to respond to. Tower Hamlets is a borough of 330,000 people in inner East London, the most densely populated local authority in the United Kingdom, and the borough that contains more new-build residential development than anywhere else in the capital. It has a tube station every few minutes. It is home to the second largest financial district in Europe, and its housing market is falling faster than almost anywhere in London. The average house price in Tower Hamlets fell 9.5% in the 12 months to January 2026, according to the ONS UK House Price Index, nearly 6 times faster than the London average. The borough with the most supply is the borough with the sharpest fall. That is the Tower Hamlets paradox, and it is not accidental. The dying happening in Tower Hamlets is not the dying of a declining town. It is the dying of a specific model. The model that said you could build towers of 1 and 2 bedroom flats at £600,000 and £700,000, sell them to international investors and London professionals who needed to be 10 minutes from a Canary Wharf desk, and create a functioning neighborhood on top of that transaction. The model broke when hybrid working broke the commute premium, when building safety legislation froze the resale market on unresolved cladding buildings, and when the international investor who was underwriting the whole structure quietly stepped back. What is left is the most acute expression in London of a development strategy that was always more financial product than community. The towers are occupied at densities below what was projected. The service charges are higher than the residents budgeted for. The buildings with unresolved EWS 1 fire safety certificates cannot be sold to mortgage buyers. An entire tier of the property market has effectively frozen. And in the neighborhoods of Poplar and Bow and Stepney that predate the towers, where the Bangladeshi and Somali communities that have lived in Tower Hamlets for generations, are watching their rents climb and their children move to Newham and Barking, the question of who this borough is actually being built for is getting harder to answer. Croydon is the largest London borough by population, 400,000 people, and it is a borough that has been described as being in recovery for so long that the description has lost meaning. In 2020, Croydon Council issued a Section 114 notice, the largest local government bankruptcy in UK history. In 2022, it issued a second one. A borough that bankrupt twice in 2 years does not recover on a press release timeline. The consequences are still running through the borough's fabric in 2026. Council tax has risen sharply, among the highest increases of any London authority, as the council works to rebuild its balance sheet. Services that were cut during the financial crisis have not been restored at the same level. Libraries, youth services, social care support, the infrastructure that a borough of 400,000 people requires has been operating below capacity for 6 years. The people most affected are the people least able to absorb the gap. The housing market reflects the reputational and economic reality. Croydon recorded a 3.8% annual price fall in 2024, and the new build flat market has corrected harder. The supply overhang from landlord exits following the Renters' Rights Act 2025 has added further downward pressure as buy-to-let investors list properties at reduced prices just to clear their positions. The high street vacancy rate in Croydon town center sits above the national average. The Westfield development, promised, announced, redesigned, and re-announced across more than a decade, remains unbuilt. The cranes in the CGI rendering have not yet become cranes in the sky. Croydon's transport connections remain excellent. The 15-minute train to London Bridge is as fast as it has ever been, but a fast train to the city does not repair a civic institution that has been systemically underfunded since 2020, and it does not draw buyers back into a market where the history of 2 council bankruptcies in 30 months has embedded a discount that will take years to fully unwind. Barking and Dagenham is the cheapest London borough, the fastest falling London borough in annual price terms for 2024, and one of 2 London boroughs projected by the Greater London Authority to lose population over the coming decade. Those 3 facts, taken together, describe a borough under a set of compounding pressures that the infrastructure of a single Elizabeth Line station cannot fully offset. The Ford Motor Company's presence defined Barking and Dagenham for 60 years. At its peak, the plant employed 40,000 people. The plant closed its manufacturing operations in 2002. The community infrastructure, the housing, the schools, the transport network, the social fabric, was built for a workforce that no longer exists in the same form, in an economy that has not yet settled on a replacement at comparable scale. The Science and Technology Park developing on the former Ford site is real, and it is growing. But 40,000 manufacturing jobs with pension rights and union representation do not become 40,000 life science jobs in a decade. Crime in the borough sits well above both London and national averages. Robbery runs at more than 3 times the national rate, vehicle crime nearly twice. These numbers shape how the borough is perceived by buyers considering it and by businesses evaluating whether to locate there. Perception, in economic terms, is causal. A borough perceived as unsafe attracts a narrower range of businesses, which narrows the employment base, which affects the income profile of residents, which affects what they spend locally, which affects the viability of the high street, which reinforces the perception. The cycle is not inevitable, but it is not self-correcting either. The Barking Riverside development is one of Europe's largest housing projects. 10,800 homes on a former power station site. It is proceeding. But a housing development is not an economy. A new community of 30,000 people on a riverside site requires jobs, schools, health services, and commercial activity that arrives with them or shortly after. In Barking Riverside, in 2026, the homes are going up and the surrounding infrastructure is working to keep pace. Lewisham is a borough of 310,000 people in southeast London that has spent the better part of 2 decades being described as the next big thing in southeast London. Next to Peckham, next to New Cross, adjacent to Deptford and Brockley, and all the postcodes that the culture sections of newspapers were writing about. Lewisham was always the cheaper alternative, the borough where the trajectory was supposed to arrive after it had already moved through the neighbors. The trajectory arrived in some parts. Brockley gentrified, New Cross changed, Forest Hill has been receiving buyers displaced from further in. But Lewisham Town Centre, the civic core of the borough, The place around the DLR station and the shopping center in the Lewisham Exchange has a high street vacancy rate that sits above the national average and a commercial life that has contracted rather than expanded over the past 5 years. The flat market in Lewisham fell 1.6% in the year to February 2026, a divergence from the semi-detached market in the same borough, which grew 2.7% in the same period. That split tells you everything about what is happening to the buyer composition. The people who can afford to buy family homes in Lewisham are doing so. The investor and young professional market that drove the flat market is under sustained pressure from higher mortgage rates and an increased supply of rental stock that has created a buyer's market in the one-bedroom segment. New build flats completing into Lewisham are sitting longer than comparable properties 3 years ago. The borough carries significant deprivation in its northern end. Deptford and parts of Evelyn Ward rank among the most deprived areas in the country on the index of multiple deprivation. The prosperity that has arrived in Forest Hill and Honor Oak in the south of the borough has not distributed evenly. Lewisham is a borough of genuine contrasts, and the contrast in 2026 is widening rather than narrowing. Southwark is an inner South London borough that runs from London Bridge and Borough Market down through Elephant and Castle, Peckham and Dulwich to the boundary with Lewisham and Bromley. It is a borough that by every cultural metric should be thriving. The Tate Modern is there, Borough Market is there, the Globe Theatre, the Shard, Bermondsey's Gallery, and food scene. Peckham's cultural emergence has been documented internationally, and yet Southwark is dying in a very specific way that the cultural success story obscures. The borough has seen a 32% fall in primary school applications over the last decade, the steepest of any London borough. That number is not a rounding error. It is a demographic signal of extraordinary clarity. The families that a borough's long-term civic health depends upon, the parents with children of school age who form the backbone of PTA networks and local shops and community institutions, are leaving Southwark faster than they are being replaced. The mechanism is displacement. Southwark contains 4 wards in the Trust for London top 53 most rapidly gentrifying London neighborhoods. The income of residents in parts of Peckham and Camberwell has shifted dramatically upward over 8 years. Social rented housing has declined faster than the London average. The families that were here have moved to Lewisham, Croydon, Bromley, wherever the prices allowed them to stay in reach. What remains is either very expensive or very deprived, with a narrowing middle that once provided the social glue. The new build towers arriving in the Elephant and Castle zone, completing now in 2026 into a market where one-bedroom flats are priced at £550,000 to £650,000, are being built for a resident profile that does not include the families who left. They are being built for single professionals and investor landlords. And the borough's schools, with 30% fewer applications than a decade ago, are sitting with spare capacity in buildings designed for a community that the market has already relocated. Haringey is a North London borough of about 280,000 people, running from Tottenham and the Lee Valley in the east across to Muswell Hill and Crouch End in the west. It is a borough of 2 halves that have never properly been stitched together, and in 2026 the eastern half is accumulating pressures that the cultural reputation of the western half cannot absorb. Tottenham has been promised regeneration for longer than most of its current residents have been alive. The Spurs Stadium arrived. The High Road West master plan has been through multiple iterations and now sits at an advanced planning stage. These are real developments. They are not yet the economic transformation that the borough's eastern communities have been told to expect. The income inequality between the east and west of Haringey is among the starkest of any single London borough. The average household income in Muswell Hill and Crouch End sits more than twice the average in Tottenham and White Hart Lane Ward. That gap produces different school outcomes, different health outcomes, different crime exposure, and different relationships to the housing market. Both ends of that spectrum are inside the same local authority, sharing the same council tax base and the same political leadership. The index of multiple deprivation places significant parts of Tottenham among the most deprived areas in England. Child poverty in the east of the borough runs at rates that belong in a different statistical universe from the farmers' market receipts in Alexandra Palace. Haringey is not dying uniformly. It is dying in its east while its west continues to gentrify, and the resources that would need to flow from one half to the other to change that trajectory are not flowing at the required scale. Lambeth is an inner South London borough that runs from the South Bank and Waterloo through Brixton, Stockwell, and Clapham to Streatham in the south. It is the borough with the highest recorded crime rate in London, 132 crimes per 1,000 residents, 8 homicides in 2025. 13,700 recorded theft offenses in the same period. That number needs to be stated plainly because it is the defining fact about Lambeth in 2026 for any analysis that is honest about what is happening there. The crime rate is not evenly distributed across the borough. Clapham North and parts of Streatham carry a different risk profile to the corridor between Brixton and Stockwell. But the borough-wide figure applies to the postcode a buyer is purchasing into, and mortgage lenders and insurers price borough-level risk, not street-level sentiment. The housing market in Lambeth reflects the divergence inside the borough. 9 Elms and Vauxhall, the riverside towers in the north of the borough, have seen some of the sharpest new build flat price falls in London. Properties completing today at £700,000 that sold for £1.1 million at peak. The south of the borough, through Streatham and Tulse Hill, has been more stable but is absorbing a supply overhang of landlord exits that is keeping prices soft across the entire flat market. Lambeth's cultural assets, Brixton Market, the Ritzy Cinema, the Electric Avenue, a music heritage that runs through the last 50 years of British cultural life, are real and they are not going anywhere. But culture does not reduce a crime rate of 132 per thousand, and the gap between what Lambeth contains culturally and what it costs to live there safely is one that the buyer doing honest due diligence in 2026 has to sit with rather than talk themselves out of. Westminster is the center of everything. Parliament, Buckingham Palace, Mayfair, Oxford Street, the most photographed borough in the world, the most institutionally dense address in the country, and the borough that recorded the largest annual house price fall of any London borough in the 12 months to December 2025, down 14.8% in a single year. In Westminster, the dying in Westminster is unlike the dying anywhere else on this list. It is not poverty dying, it is vacancy dying. Westminster has been losing residential population for years, down 6.9% since 2011. The borough increasingly functions as a stage set during the day and an absence at night. The international buyers who purchased Mayfair and Bayswater flats as investment vehicles or London bases have stepped back. The 2025 non-dom tax regime changes, the stamp duty surcharges for overseas purchasers, the annual tax on enveloped dwellings, each of these individually was manageable. Together, they changed the return calculation for the buyer class that was sustaining Westminster prices at their peak levels. A flat on Green Street in Mayfair sold in August 2025 for £2.2 million. The same property had sold in May 2024 for £3.65 million, a loss of £1.45 million in 14 months. In Mayfair, that transaction is documented in land registry data. It is not an outlier. It is one of many similar transactions happening across the WW1 and W2 postcodes as the international buyer exit accelerates and the domestic buyer pool discovers it cannot bridge the gap. Westminster is not dying in the way that Croydon is dying or Haringey is dying. It is hollowing out at the top end in a way that has no precedent in the modern history of this borough. The lights are on in the landmark buildings. A growing proportion of the residential towers above them are dark. Number 1 on this list is the City of London. 1 square mile, 9,000 residents, the financial heart of one of the world's 4 largest economies, and the residential property market recording the largest annual price fall of any local authority in England in the 12 months to October 2025, down 18.1% in a year, from a base that was already falling. The City of London is dying as a place where people live. That sentence would have been unthinkable 10 years ago and is now supported by the transaction data. A flat that sold for close to £900,000 at the 2022 peak is listed at £580,000 today and receiving no offers. The buyer who was paying those prices was paying for something specific: the right to walk to the trading floor, to be inside the infrastructure of financial capitalism, in a way that justified a price per square foot that had no equivalent anywhere outside central London. Hybrid working dissolved that justification. The managing director at an investment bank who now attends the office 3 days a week is not paying £900,000 for a flat he uses for the commute. He moved to Richmond, or he moved to Margate. The 9,000 residents who remain in the City of London in 2026 are choosing an address that has, for most of its history, been defined by the density and intensity of the economic activity surrounding them. That activity is still there 5 days a week. It is not there on Wednesday or Friday, and the residential market is pricing that absence in real time. The City of London keeps building. Developers keep receiving planning consent for residential towers on the edges of the square mile. Those towers complete into a market where the fundamental demand thesis for living in a financial district has been permanently altered by a working pattern that is not reversing. The result is not a market adjusting to temporary conditions. It is a market repricing a permanent structural change in what it means to live inside 1 square mile of glass and stone. The City of London is not dying the way neighborhoods die, slowly, through neglect, through the departure of investment and the arrival of poverty. It is dying the way that redundant things die, through the simple absence of the conditions that made them necessary. The flat is still there. The address is still there. The reason to pay what was once asked for both of them is not.